Hey, I think we're ready to go. I'm going to turn it over to Laura Lee Martin, who is our moderator this morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday, especially when you just flew in the middle of the night, Jimmy. Thank you for that. I'm Laura Lee Martin, Legislative Affairs Director for the Democratic Women's Club of Santa Cruz County. We have the largest club in the county and the oldest, and we decided it was by years, not age of members, but of over 60 years. Today, we're honored to have two of our California representatives, Congresswoman Eshoo and Congressman Panetta, join us to update us on the Build Back Better Act and the upcoming 2022 midterm election outlook. They'll each have about 20 minutes for their comments. And then following both presentations, we will open it up for about 50 minutes worth of Q&A. So get your questions ready. Before we start, some quick announcements. The meeting is being recorded. The chat will be open for your comments. The Democratic Women's Club will not be having our holiday gathering again this year due to COVID, and will not have a December forum, but we'll be back in January. And effective at midnight or Sunday, Santa Cruz has reinstated indoor mask mandates, whether or not you're vaccinated. One other one I want to mention is that statewide redistricting continues. And the current visualization draft map out for public comment in our area has our assembly district split into 3 regions and links Capitola and Aptos to Pismo Beach. Many of us have made comments on that, and I've put in the chat a link that if you want to make a comment on why our small county, I think the second smallest in the state, might be better served as not being split into 3 districts, please make comments at the public line. We draw the lines, California or ca.org. It's in the chat. Okay, I just also wanted to acknowledge that I have a very special guest in addition to our speakers today on the line, Les Francis, who was my very first boss in Washington, D.C. when I went to work for Jimmy Carter. So thank you, Les, for joining us. And also, I'm noticing Congressman Panetta, your legislative director, has joined us this morning. So thank you for having us on the call with us. Our presentations today cover 2 separate but intertwined issues, the Build Back Better Act and the prospects for the 2022 midterm elections. And during his campaign, as we all know, President Biden promised to rebuild the backbone of the country, the middle class, so that this time everyone comes along. In late October, the White House released a framework for the Build Back Better intended to guide the drafting of legislative language after negotiating with Senator Manchin and others. This framework was intended to set the U.S. on course to meet its climate goals, create millions of good paying jobs, enable more Americans to join and remain in the labor force, and grow our economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Specifically, the framework promised to invest in children and caregiving, combat climate change, expand affordable health care coverage, reduce costs, and strengthen the middle class while at the same time being fully paid for and reducing the deficit. We're delighted that both Representatives Anna Eshoo and Jimmy Panetta are joining us today to give us the inside scoop on that Build Back Better Act, and equally important, what they think we'll see in the midterm elections. Our first speaker is Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. She represents the 18th Congressional District. She's served for over 2 decades representing Silicon Valley and part of Santa Cruz County. She's the first woman in history to serve as the chair of the House Subcommittee on Health. And since 1995, she served on the powerful House Energy and Commerce Committee and previously served as the ranking member on the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology. Again, the first woman in history on that subcommittee to serve in leadership role. Prior to her election to the U.S. House of Representatives, she was elected to and served on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors for 10 years. Anna, thank you for joining us this morning. We'll have about 20 minutes for comments. For your comments, and then we'll come down to Jimmy.
Okay, thank you, Laura, and thank you, Mike, and to all of the members of the DVC. That's quite a asterisk that you are the oldest club, the longest Democratic club in Santa Cruz County. Bravo to all of you for continuing to carry the flag for our democracy. It's wonderful to be with my just the best colleague, Jimmy Panetta, and to all of the guests of the club, it's good to be with you. To say that this week was a big week for Democrats in Washington would be a huge understatement. I'd like to start with what took place on Monday, because President Biden signed into law the bipartisan infrastructure bill. This is the single largest investment in our nation's physical infrastructure since the building of the interstate highway system in the 1950s during the Eisenhower administration. It will create 1.5 million good paying jobs, most of them union jobs, every year for the next decade. And obviously it's going to usher in our nation's infrastructure for the 21st century. The American Society of Civil Engineers have graded our nation's infrastructure at a C- and a D+. This is really unacceptable for a great nation. And so it's all going to change. Now, under the bill, California is a big winner. All the transportation agencies, the public works people across the state, and I think across the country, are celebrating. So if you would like to know some specifics about it, I'd be happy to answer questions relative to roads, bridges, public transportation, airports, EV charging stations across the country, protection against wildfires, and water infrastructure. Obviously, the other big event that took place this week was the Build Back Better legislation. You know that we've been struggling mightily for months, day in and day out amongst the Democrats. We've had delays, we've had setbacks, we've taken some steps forward, some steps sideways, some steps back. The press continued to cover it and kept saying that it doesn't look like it can or will happen. But the extraordinary leadership of Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic caucus working so hard, she kept us together. She kept us together. You all need to know that. And so now the Build Back Better legislation was passed by the House of Representatives. I think of it as a economic launching pad for the middle class and working families in our country. I wish I had a dime for every time constituents have asked the following question: what can be done about the inequity, economic inequities between the top, dropping down to the middle class, and then lower income people in our country? This legislation is the answer to that. It makes childcare more affordable by ensuring that vast majorities of families pay no more than 7% of their income on childcare. Here on the peninsula, certainly in Santa Cruz County, throughout the state of California, working families pay thousands of dollars a month. I don't know how they do it, honestly. I didn't face that years ago, but families do today. Free universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds across our country. We make home-based care for the elderly and the disabled more affordable. We invested $150 billion with a B dollars in affordable housing. As the chair of the House Health Subcommittee, I'm thrilled that we allow Medicare to finally negotiate the prices it pays for prescription drugs that will lower the cost for all Americans, not just Medicare beneficiaries, but across all private insurance plans as well. And we already do that successfully, direct negotiations with the VA. The legislation caps out-of-pocket drug costs for seniors at $2,000 annually, and it caps the monthly price of insulin for diabetes patients at $35. That's a godsend. That really is. I mean, there are horror stories of people having to choose between paying their rent or buying their drugs. It provides 4 weeks, finally, of paid parental and medical leave for workers so that workers don't have to choose between their job and their families. That is a very big one. Another one that Jimmy knows all so well, because we formed a SALT caucus in the House, going back to the Trump tax cut. Many of us call it the tax scam. The Republicans essentially removed the deductibility of state and local taxes. Now, anyone that files a long form, you have basically 4 major items to deduct: mortgage interest deduction, healthcare expenses and the deductibility for them, charitable contributions and the deductibility of those, and state and local taxes. What we did with that is we raised the cap to $80,000 until 2030 without adding a cent to the deficit. So I think that this is a huge victory for us here at home. And this is another item that constituents have asked about consistently. And I think one of the major parts of this legislation is it makes the single largest investment in clean energy in our country's history. This is going to put the United States of America on track to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half and meet our country's goal under the Paris Climate Agreement. The infrastructure bill that I mentioned just a few minutes ago is all the hard infrastructure, but it didn't deal with what I just mentioned. I think the greenest part of the infrastructure bill was to bring to scale charging stations across the country. So the goal is to cut our greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. So this is robust, and we are all so proud of it. So my friends, in many ways, these are the highlights of the legislation. And all of these investments and policies are fully paid for without raising taxes on anyone making $400,000 a year or less. The Republicans are railing against it, saying it's not true, it's a lie. The bill was scored by the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. No one knows all of this better than Jimmy, serving on the Ways and Means Committee. How do we pay for it? We raise taxes on the wealthiest 0.02% of Americans, and we provide the IRS with the new resources to crack down on tax cheats. These are fair policies, and in my opinion, no-brainers. So we saw the shameful reports of huge companies paying $0 to the Treasury of the United States. This is not punishment, it's about fairness. So I think the Build Back Better legislation is not only historic, but it will reset how working families and the middle class are really part of the fullness of our economy, to give each person really a chance to make it in America. A family will be able to enjoy these benefits from not only when their children are 3 and 4 years old with universal pre-K, but moving on in the employment sector with paid medical and parental leave, to communities enjoying the benefits of infrastructure, and that we take care of our planet. This is the only home that we know, and it's a moral issue. And I'm so proud of the Democrats because we have risen to the occasion to see that we take care of our planet and the responsibility of our nation to lead the world. So thank you for inviting me. I look forward to answering your questions. And with that, I'll, as we say in the House, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Congressman Jimmy Panetta, and he serves our 20th congressional district, which includes Monterey and San Benito counties and parts of Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County. First elected in 2016, he is serving his third term in Congress. He currently serves on the House Committee on Ways and Means, the House Committee on Agriculture, and the House Committee on Armed Services. He also serves as a Chief Deputy Whip for the Democratic Majority and on the powerful House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. Thank you for joining us this morning, Jimmy.
Thank you, Laura Lee. I appreciate this opportunity. And of course, thank you to the DWC and Mike for organizing this and putting this together, and all of you for coming together on a Saturday morning. So thanks for this opportunity. And it's always humbling and quite an honor to anytime I can share the stage with Anna Eshoo. I just have to let you know, and I know many of you know this, but I'm going to say it again. We are so lucky to have someone like Anna Eshoo representing us, being my neighbor, as a colleague of mine. Her experience is absolutely invaluable, but let me tell you, her grit is absolutely inspirational. One of the things that I will never forget is in the middle of the pandemic, and realizing that there were many members who were choosing to vote by proxy, which I get and I do not disparage at all. And I think some people had to, and that's fine. So they would stay home. But every time I would go to the airport, you know who I'd see on the plane? Anna Eshoo. And my attitude was, she's doing it, I damn well better do it as well. And so she inspires many of us in Congress through her grit, through her hard work, and everything that she does on the E&C committee and so many other things. So I'm lucky to have her as her colleague, and it is a real privilege, I feel, that I get to have this opportunity with her this morning. And it's a privilege to be here. Thank you very much. Look, I think what I'm kind of sensing, to be honest with you, when I go out in the district a little bit, that people are a little angry these days, unfortunately. They turn on the TV, no matter what station it is, no matter what news station it is, and they see division. And they see crime, they see things on inflation. We're getting out of the pandemic. Heck, if you turned on C-SPAN for eight and a half hours the other night, you'd hear Kevin McCarthy talking about all of this, kind of highlighting this, unfortunately. But I can tell you though, despite what you see on TV, there's unity in Washington, D.C. There's unity amongst the Democrats, as Anna was talking about. And what you were seeing is that there is a Democratic majority and there is a Democratic administration who are actually leading a party that are interested in governing, that we're interested in getting things done. We're not dwelling on the past. Instead, what we've seen from the 117th Congress, what we've seen from this administration is forward-thinking legislation that has been put on the deck. From the American Rescue Plan to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Plan to the Build Back Better Act. These are all forward-thinking pieces of legislation, huge, biggest that I think I'll ever see in my career, or maybe even my lifetime, to be honest with you, that is basically going to be an injection, as what Anna said, an injection into the parts of this country where people need it the most. Now, yes, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we on the Central Coast get our share, especially when it comes to our infrastructure. But you also got to realize that these investments are going to provide money to parts of this country that are less educated, less affluent, and really feel right now that they've been left behind. And that's very, very important. Now, I'm going to start off with something that I think we got to continue to remind people, and that's the American Rescue Plan. Like I said, the first of the three major bills that this administration put forward. As I said throughout the pandemic, our strategy was federally funded, state mandated, locally executed. And when it came to our part in Congress, the federally funded aspect of it, we did our job. And we injected huge amounts of funding into our communities that I firmly believe kept the economy afloat, kept our poverty rate flat, and really kept us in that race between injections and infections. And yes, I'm going to take this time, because anytime I can, I'm going to remind you how much came in to our communities. Santa Cruz County and its cities got $118 million. That meant that there was funding for homeless, for housing, for police, for fire, for healthcare. We put money in our schools, our colleges, our airports. We took advantage of the PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection loans, that basically 10,000 businesses in my district took advantage of that. That means 100,000 jobs were affected by those loans. When it comes to housing, obviously something that's very important to us, in the CARES Act, we provided $7 million in community development block grants. Santa Cruz got 915,000, Watsonville got 950,000. Housing authority grants through the HUD CARES Act funding, Santa Cruz received over $1 million. When it comes to the ARP rental assistance, something that was so important, Santa Cruz County got $6.5 million. And in regards to the American Rescue Plan Emergency Housing and Homeless, there was $10 billion put forward, $5 billion for Section 8 housing choice vouchers, $5 billion allocated to provide supportive services for homeless and other at-risk individuals. Now, mind you, that was throughout the country, but obviously some of that got here on the Central Coast. So very, very important injection of funding that was really needed for us on the Central Coast, that was needed, let me tell you, throughout our country. But we didn't stop there. Democrats didn't stop there. We couldn't stop there, because especially now, I do believe that we are at an inflection point. There's no doubt about that. We have underinvested in our working families and in our working infrastructure for far too long. Now, I get it. There's a lot of things right now that we're kind of feeling. We're coming off the pandemic. It's taking time to start up again. And what I heard a great analogy, it's like turning off and on your computer. It doesn't just come right back on. It takes time to gear back up to get to full speed. And that's where we're at in coming out of the pandemic. People are slowly getting back to work. Look, you know as well as I do, we're not full force right now. People have childcare issues. They have housing issues. They're scared of catching the illness still, which is understandable. But what you also got to realize, though, is that people do have money right now, in the sense that people's checking accounts are pretty full. Their personal debt has been a little bit lowered, and they're buying products right now, not necessarily experiences, okay? They're still kind of staying home, but they've been definitely buying products. And that's the difference with other tough times in our economy, in that the past few times, it's been encouraging people to buy products. That's not the issue now. People are buying products, a lot of them. And so the problem is that we need the supply. So we have a demand economy. We just need the supply right now. And that's why the investment that we've made, that we saw this week, that we're making this week, basically is an investment in working families and an investment in our working infrastructure that's going to help get us out of these difficulties that we're experiencing right now. The investment in our physical infrastructure will lead to productivity, and therefore it's going to increase our supply. The investment in our human infrastructure is going to increase our productivity, because it's just like Anna said, it's going to help working parents get right back into the workforce. Therefore, it's going to help our labor pool. Now, as Anna mentioned, she went through the bipartisan infrastructure plan that I had the honor of being at the White House to see the president sign into law. And she obviously mentioned a number of areas. Just let me add on to that. 11 billion for highway and pedestrian safety, 39 billion. These are billions. It's a lot of money. I know lately we've been talking trillions and billions and millions, and it all kind of can sound the same. It definitely doesn't mean the same. $1 billion is a lot of money. 65 billion for broadband, which we need dearly. And I know in my district here on the Central Coast, 17 billion for ports and waterways, which will help reduce the backlog in our supply chain. Something that's important. Overall, it's going to be 55. It's going to be about 65 billion for water infrastructure. 8.3 of that is going to go to Western water infrastructure. For us here on the Central Coast, we're going to get part of that. 73 billion for grid reliability, 46 billion for resiliency, as Anna mentioned. Well, that means like wildfire management. I was proud that one of my bills, the Replant Act, got put in there to take the cap off the reforestation efforts in our national forest, something that's so needed, especially with the wildfires we've experienced. 7.5 billion for low carbon and zero emission school buses. And yes, as Anna mentioned, 7.5 for EV charging infrastructure. All significant investments in our working economy. Now, I know Anna and I are probably going to get a question. Well, when are we going to see our share of that? Well, look, the bill just got signed on Monday. Okay. Fortunately, the president had the wherewithal to appoint somebody as a czar overseeing how this infrastructure gets implemented. It's going to be Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, governor of Louisiana, who's going to be basically in charge of that. And my opinion is it needs to be done sooner rather than later. The fact that he appointed somebody to that position means that it's the president's thinking as well. So that's a good thing. Now, with the Build Back Better Act, basically you're seeing a bill that focuses on climate and focuses on families. As Anna said, and I'm going to repeat her, you bet I'm going to, it's an honor to repeat what she said. That is the largest investment ever in our history to fight climate change. It's the most ambitious plan in our nation's history. And we deal with it with tax credits for renewable energy. And there's one part that's punitive, and that there's going to be a fee on the emissions of methane, which is very important. And then when it comes to our family, universal pre-K, extend the child tax credit, something that we need to do a better job highlighting, to be honest with you. That child tax credit, in the extension of it, that in the increase and expansion of it that we put forward in the American Rescue Plan, that is cut child poverty by 25%. It's on its way to cut child poverty in half. We understood that. That's why we extended it for another year in the Build Back Better Act. The child tax credit is very, very important for children, for working families. I can't stress that enough. We invest in childcare. We invest in training programs for workers and increasing Pell Grants. As Anna said, we provide paid leave, medical and family leave. We deal with drug pricing, but also a couple of things I want to highlight when it comes to immigration reform. It's not final, but it's something that's very, very important. Let me make this clear. This is a tough issue, as many of you know, especially if you've worked on this issue. We were able to put in the Build Back Better plan what is called, it's a horrible word, let me tell you, it's called a parole program. We're not using that word. Don't use that word. It's called it's basically working permits, okay? So basically, there's a program in there to provide permits for people to work who are undocumented. That gives them legalization for 10 years. It doesn't provide them a pathway, unfortunately, but this is what we can get. And I'm not just talking about some of our Republicans. I'm talking about some of our Democrats who have districts that don't value immigrants like we do here on the Central Coast of California. But that is a good thing right now. It's in the Build Back Better plan. Like I said, work permits for undocumented that can qualify for it. We also reclaimed some visas. Let's just hope the parliamentarian keeps it in there over in Senate. If not, possibly a Democratic majority could overrule the parliamentarian, put it in there anyway. That's something that I'm for. I think it's necessary right now, especially what we see in regards to contributions of immigrants to our economy, our community, and who we are as a culture. In housing, $65 billion for public housing, $24 billion for housing choice vouchers, $10 billion for grants for down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers, something that's very important for us on the Central Coast, and $10 billion for the low-income housing tax credit so that there are developers who get tax credits for focusing on affordable housing, something that's very important. You heard about the clean energy aspects of it, which is very important. I'm proud that as a member of the Ways and Means, I was able to get in a couple aspects of a couple pieces of legislation for me, one dealing with microgrids, incentivizing linear generators, tax credits for e-buses, and something that was kind of special, a tax credit for e-bikes. I don't know if many of you have ridden an e-bike, but let me tell you, you're seeing them everywhere these days. And we want to incentivize getting more butts on bikes. And this tax credit for e-bikes does that. In regards to healthcare, as Anna talked about, we extend and expand the ACA premium tax credit. We close the Medicaid gap by making the ACA premium tax credits available through 2025. And we expand Medicare, establishing a hearing benefit for Medicare, so that Medicare recipients can use hearing. So a number of things that are on this. And that is something that obviously we need to work on, to be honest with you, when it comes to messaging. Because I'm sure you guys are going, oh, this is a lot. This is a lot. You're damn right, it's a lot. That's why we're so proud of it. But we got to continue to work on ways of how we sell this, how we tell people this is going to help them. These are major bills that are going to help them. And it's important right now. And let me just kind of add something to this. Look, I think, and I heard this phrase the other day. I read this, and I think it's important. We are an immigrant-fueled frontier nation, and that we value our individual mobility and we reward hard work. That really is the foundation for our success. However, and Anna alluded to this, however, the issue that we've seen over the past decades is that mobility has been stunted. And what we've seen is that it's the education has emerged as the key in that success. And that workers with college degrees, their wages have risen 80%, 86% more than those without college degrees. And there's been little increase in wages for those without college degrees since 1979. In 2016, there were only 1 in 2 less skilled men in rural America that actually had a job. Now, we know that's led to the division and derision that we're seeing in our politics. I firmly believe that. And so we're not just seeing losses in absolute mobility, we're seeing losses in relative mobility. That means that people feel that no longer is the American dream attainable. No longer can their children have the better life than they do. That's why these bills are so important. I can't stress it enough. That's what we're doing in Washington, D.C. with leaders like Anna Eshoo, and you bet with leaders like Speaker Pelosi. It's these types of investments that are so important. Now, look, it's not the GI Bill. It's not the FDR New Deal. But don't, as Speaker Pelosi said, don't look at this bill for what's not in it. Look at these bills for what's in it, especially when it comes to investing in our children. Early childhood education, universal pre-K, the child tax credit, and childcare. That is investment that's going to boost our productivity for years to come. Yes, in the short term and in the holidays, you're still going to be people feeling like we sense in our community, we sense in our country. But a lot of that is people that distrust change. And that the thing is that success mobilizes the opposition. Well, you know what? Let's continue to succeed. That's what we're doing in Washington, D.C. And obviously that's what we're doing with your help, because it's this type of investment that is needed for the Central Coast, for Santa Cruz, for the healing of our nation, investment that's going to reduce our inequality. It's going to spread opportunity. It's going to increase the mobility that we've talked about. And I hope, and it has to, reaffirm the foundation for our unity, not just in the Democratic Party, but in the country. So I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about the foundation for these bills, but also an understanding of what these bills contain and how we must talk about them going into the 2022 election and the 2024 election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for the hard work and the heavy lifting you've been doing. It's been, it's quite a project, and we look forward to where it's going to take us and how we can help you. Before we start the Q&A, I wanted to remind us, we also wanted to get a little bit of insight on the midterms. And our nation sits on the razor's edge of democracy, and the Democrats are really good at the policy and lifting the nation as a whole. And the Republicans are very effective at tapping into the emotions and the fear. So how are we going to move forward in the midterms in a way that keeps the train moving forward, if I can use an infrastructure term? Anna or Jimmy, just a couple of minutes on that before we open up for questions.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. We have history as the top layer of this, because for decades, the party in control, the president's party in control in the midterms, it moves the other way. It moves the other way. So we need to make history again by not allowing that to happen. There is much that rests on redistricting across the country because this is taking place in every state. Here in California, the people of California changed how redistricting is done. It's in the hands of citizens and not the state legislature. As I mentioned earlier, there's a great deal of anxiety surrounding this because the visualizations that the commission has put out so far has some of the districts, the Democratic districts in California, going another way. And I think it's very important to stress that members really cannot try to manipulate what the commission is doing. It's up to people in communities, as you mentioned earlier, that they weigh in on what they like and what they think is not in the best interests of the county, the cities, the towns that they live in. For members to do that, I have said to my colleagues, it's the equivalent of jury tampering. So the role of citizens in their communities is a very, very important and powerful one. We have to message well because there will be the fear mongering, race baiting, all that the Republicans do. All you have to listen to is the garbled message of Kevin McCarthy for what, 8+ hours on the floor of the House. The Democrats have a very powerful message that can be delivered to the American people. There isn't anything I think that's more powerful than to express to people that it's not the party that you're for, it's the party that's for you in your life, in your circumstance. And I have great confidence in that. So it's message, it is mobilization in our communities, in our counties, in our cities and towns, exactly what the club has done for decades. And it's the money too. We know that the Republicans are very good at raising what I call dark money. So we each member has a responsibility in that we make the investments on the ground. I don't think there's anything that is a more eloquent statement in a campaign than the ground operations. These may sound like old ideas to you, but they may be age old, but there isn't anything that takes the place of it. On the ground mobilization. So it's a combination of all of those things.
Thank you, Anna. Jimmy, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, look, Anna, of course, nailed it in regards to the many categories that she laid out. I think she's right. I mean, I think we do have to look at history, especially with our slim majorities that we have, 3 in the House, none in the Senate. And so that puts us in a very tough situation, especially considering looking back and seeing the history of how the American people feel towards the party in power at this point, especially the way people are feeling right now. That's why we need to do everything we can to ensure that these bills that we are passing and getting signed into law are truly affecting people. Now, what worries me, and I saw this, I heard this the other day on the NewsHour, which is my go-to, and I like the Friday analysis by David Brooks and Jonathan Capehart, which is something I recommend everybody listen to. And David Brooks said something that scared the hell out of me. He said, look, he said it because he couldn't even answer this question. He said, I'm at a point now where what I'm seeing is that the people are punishing those politicians who don't do well, and they're not rewarding the politicians who do well.
Mhm.
And that's what really kind of scares me, because we're doing well. Okay, let's make that clear. Democrats are doing well. And I tried to lay that out in my opening remarks with these 3 major bills. But how do we get the people to appreciate that? And will people ensure that they vote with their wallets and their heads rather than with the bile that they're feeling right now in their guts? And I can't answer. I don't know, but I think Anna's right in the sense that we have to do what we've continued to do in 2018 and 2020, and that's get out the vote. Obviously, beyond our blue bubble here in California, we got in on the coast, we got to get into the Central Valley, we got to get into the center of America still. We got to help these individuals out who are in those purple districts, who are hanging on by a thread, to be honest with you. Very tough districts. And so it does take mobilization, not just here in our blue districts. It takes mobilization in those purple districts, even some of those red districts, where we have Democrats in Congress. And so that's what we did in 2018. That's what we do in 2020. That's what we have to continue to do going into 2022 and 2024. We have to continue. That's why I talked about the American Rescue Plan. That's why we're talking today about these 2 big bills, one signed into law, one passed out of the House that still has a little ways to go through the Senate, maybe back to the House, and then onto the president's desk. But it's these types of discussions that are so beneficial, not just within this group right here, but beyond this group, beyond Santa Cruz, beyond the Central Coast, into the center of America, continuing to remind people that we are the party that's not storming the Capitol. We are the party that's not yelling and screaming about what's wrong with the country. We are the party that's putting forward solutions to fix this country with these 3 bills. So it's, you know, and I'm thinking out loud here, obviously, as you can tell, and I'm sorry about that, but it's that type of messaging, as Anna hit on, that really we have to work on, and we have to bang away when it comes to people who are looking and yearning for something to hang their hat on, something to give them a reason to vote for us right now. It's very, very important. So look, we got a lot of work to do, and I'm glad we're having something like this, over a year out from the next election, because it's starting to get us to think about what we need to do come 2022.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Laura-
We're going to open it for, go ahead, Anna.
else, I think that it is essential, because there isn't anything that's more important to each person in this country is their own personal economy. Their own personal economy. And we have directed all of our efforts toward that. And I think that that's what we need to stick with. The nation's economy, the economy of families, the economy of individuals, regardless of whether they have a college degree, a high school diploma, wherever they live in the country, these policies are for them. And I think that, the Republicans want to scare people and say that you could hear it with what Kevin McCarthy was railing about. They don't want to accept that we've been responsible relative to the economy. So I just think that everything that we say and do needs to be expressed through that lens.
Thank you. Okay, we're getting ready to open up for Q&A, and I want to remind people the call is recorded, or this Zoom is recorded. We'll take questions in the chat if you don't want to raise your hand and speak them yourselves. And I already have 3 in the queue. So you can raise your hand on screen and we'll catch you, or you can put it in the chat. And I'd like to start with Les Francis. He put the first question up.
Thanks, Laura. And it's good to see so many friends. Anna, it's always a delight to be with you and Jimmy and other friends on the call. I have no claim to Santa Cruz. I live in the Sierra foothills, grew up in San Jose, but I did spend many weekends and many vacations in Santa Cruz, so I claim some sort of citizenship on the Central Coast. and Anna, you mentioned McCarthy's 8.5 hour speech. I have a hard time listening to the guy for 8.5 minutes, so I can't imagine what it was like on the floor. Um, I know the dangers of having these kinds of discussions publicly and prematurely and whatnot. The bill passed the House. It's a $1.5 trillion price tag. CBO says we come up short 160 billion. I guess we could, quarrel with how they reach that, but let's just, for the sake of discussion, say it's 160 billion short. That's a problem for Manchin, maybe Sinema in the Senate. It seems to me that the solution is obvious. $1.340 trillion bill. Just shave the 160 and come to agreement and call their bluff. Am I being overly simplistic, or is that sort of the direction you think things are likely to head? Either Anna or Jimmy.
Well, Les, first of all, it's so great to see you. And to everyone that's listening in, Les continues to be really a source of wise counsel, not only to me, but I'm sure to Jimmy, and I know to others, and has done so much work where he lives to beef up the Democratic effort. Look, this bill still has to be passed by the Senate, so there are going to be more negotiations. On the amount of money you just mentioned, Les, there's a difference between the CBO score and I think the Joint Committee on Taxation. Maybe Jimmy knows better than I do on this, on what the return of the collection of taxes will be with the increase of IRS agents. And so one score is higher, another score is lower. So it's not menacing. Most frankly, for the overall price tag of this and the revenues that we have targeted, I think the bill is going to be fully paid for. Now, the Republicans are going to say it's not, but they don't know what they're talking about, and they have really one hell of a nerve, because the Trump tax scam was $4 trillion, and they paid for very little of it. Most of it was charged to the national debt, and it didn't do a damn thing for working families and individuals in the country. It was for the 0.01 top % of the country and the largest corporations. So, we have to know how to say something back on this, but the Senate is going to negotiate this. And I think that House Democrats are going to have to fasten our seatbelts, because I think some of the things that they may do, we're not going to be happy with. But the oxygen of our democracy is consensus, and we can't forget that. We cannot forget that. It's easy to stomp our feet and say, no, I'm not for that. But we have to have a much larger vision about it. So we're proud of what we've produced. Now it's up to the Senate.
Yeah, I think, hey, Les, good to see you. And thank you for everything that you have done. And obviously, I would have the fortunate opportunity to see your daughter at the Watsonville Charter School a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I know.
It seems like they got a good thing going on there. But let me just to address the question that Anna just mentioned. The CBO score says that it will raise, in regards to going after the tax cheats, that will raise $207 billion. However, even Larry Summers says it's going to raise more than that.
Jimmy, say who Larry Summers is for the audience.
Former Secretary of Treasury, who's been pretty tough on Democrats and this bill in the past few months. Been pretty tough on the worries about inflation and so forth. One of the smartest guys out there, but been pretty tough. And so he even says that basically it's going to raise about $450 billion just through going after tax cheats right there. So understood about the CBO score and the worry about that. However, I do think there are certain avenues in reality where you're going to see a lot more coming in. But also to your question about, why can't you just, shave some off? This is the difficulties of having such a slim majority, because unfortunately, we do have some members who are more apt to say no, some members in our party that are more apt to say no than to work through and get to yes. And that's what we saw in the past couple months, basically legislating on TV, sort of watching the sausage getting made within our own party on TV. Unfortunately, or fortunately for transparency, however you want to look at it. But that is a problem, because in one time, once you start squeezing the water balloon at one end, it starts to pop out on the other end. And with that slim majority, it can be very, very difficult. And it does take some time to do it. I'm not relying on that. I'm not using that as an out. That's the reality of having such a slim majority that we do right now, and making sure that we get the numbers to pass this bill, be it in the Senate and be it in the House of Representatives. So it can be tough. But I do believe that we've laid a good foundation in our negotiations that we've had over the past couple of months, not just with House members, but obviously these negotiations were with the members of the Senate who had difficulties with it, and actually were with the White House as well. So obviously Speaker Pelosi has that sort of wherewithal to do that. In regards, let me just give you some inside baseball in regards to the 8.5-hour speech by Kevin McCarthy. We weren't on the floor, okay? I don't know if Anna was. I sure as hell wasn't. And Speaker Pelosi wasn't on the floor as well. We weren't going to stick around and listen to that. Now, mind you, I was in my office, and it was like every time I'd have it on mute to see what was going to happen, just in case he stopped speaking. And I'd unmute it, and I'd hear border muted, unmuted again, crime muted, unmuted again, border muted again. Muted, unmuted again, inflation. I mean, like I said, it was just a big rail on the fear factor that they really are playing at this point. So that being said, I heard some of the things he said. It's not going to phase us clearly by the maneuver by leadership to. Then what we did literally at about 12:30, we basically sent out a notice. He spoke till 5:30. Okay, at 12:30, we sent out a notice saying no more votes tonight. So we were able to go home and go to bed at 1 o'clock, and he just continued to rail. And there was nobody in the chamber except those few you saw sitting behind him. Let's be clear. The unfortunate thing is he did that without telling anybody. So staff had to sit there and listen to him because they didn't know, they didn't make any precautions or take any precautions going forward. So it was really kind of unfortunate that he would do that at that time of the day going forward. But like I said, that didn't stop us. And let's be clear on that. And that's kind of the response back to, no matter how long you speak, no matter how divisive you want to be, we're still getting stuff done. And I think that was an excellent example. Look, I got to say, one of my proudest moments as a member, and not just in the 117th Congress, but in my limited time in Congress, was on January 6th, despite the fact that Capitol was, there was an insurrection in the Capitol, and that you had put a pause on the process, man, we got right back on that floor. We did our job that day. We cleared them out, and we did our job that day. And let me tell you, obviously, when I was in my office and the anger that I felt, but my second emotion was, oh no, we're not going to let them stop us. And that's the attitude I think we have to have going into these next elections. They can't let the sons of guns stop us. We got to continue to go forward. That's what we're doing right now with these bills. That's what we have to do in 2022. Can't let us stop us no matter what they do.
Thank you. Just to let you know, in the queue for questions, I have Alan Unger, and I'm going to have a couple questions I'm going to read, and Donna Myers and Bob LaMonica. So keep putting your names or questions in the chat. And Trink, I see yours as well. Okay, so next would be Alan Unger.
Thank you, Laura. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Laura. And in a way, I feel like I've gone to church or temple here on Saturday morning. This is a great boost. And it also, listening to Anna and Jimmy, really touch on some of the things that I've been thinking of, and you know, being reminded, as David Brooks has pointed out, it's not what it might seem, that Biden has in fact done a really historic and a good job, as has the delegation in Congress and so forth. I wanted to just make one observation and a suggestion, if I could. The observation is that among friends, we've heard so many friends say, geez, that's such a big number. And why don't they say over 10 years? Give it some context so that people don't immediately either freak out, tune out, or get mad. So to Anna and Jimmy, if you can pass that along to your colleagues and to the speaker, I think it really helps. And the other observation, though, again, going back to the analogy of being in Temple, I'm reminded that no matter what the media says or the quote experts in Washington, it's really folks like ourselves out in the districts, on the ground. I remember 4 years ago, I volunteered at Les Francis's urging to go up to the 4th district where Les lives, because he started an organization and they really made a difference there behind a Democratic candidate. And just this past week, Steve Schmidt spoke to a group of friends in Ohio that are starting or resurrecting a group that they started in 2004 called Bring Ohio Back. And my friend Jerry Austin, Steve Schmidt, and others say, hey, this year we're starting now and we're going to make a difference in Ohio. We're going to do it with people on the ground, people who understand Ohio. And with all due respect to our friends from Washington, people from Ohio who understand the state, not people sent in by the DCCC or so forth, but people really who know how to make it happen. And that's what's going to turn things around this coming midterm.
Thank you, Alan.
I don't think there's anything I need to add to that. Those are excellent points, Alan. I love the over 10 years. That's right. I think sometimes we get caught up in, talking about all the good stuff and we miss those little intricacies. And that's a very, very important point. So thank you for bringing that up. And also let's talk about Ohio. Look, we got a guy running there who we serve with, Tim Ryan, and you talk about understanding that state. He's running for Senate, as I said. He understands Ohio. Let me tell you. You ever see him give I'd recommend you guys Google him on some of his floor speeches. There's a reason why he's in one of those purple districts right now in the congressional seat, very union type district, old school union type district. And people like him a lot. And I think he's got a really good chance, especially with who the Republicans are putting up at this point right now, basically kind of, these, I think one of them has a criminal history. He's all in Trumper. I think that's the type of seat that if we focus on and put the right candidate in there as a Democrat, which I believe is Tim Ryan, I think that's something that we could pick up. So thank you for mentioning that. And I hope that people look to Ohio to, as you said, get on the ground and help out.
Thank you. The next question I'm going to read is from Elena Cohen. And this one looks at social, let me just read it verbatim. Most of the social programs in the Build Back Better Act passed by the House are set to expire after 6 years or fewer. Why did Congress choose to structure the bill this way instead of funding a few core priorities that could be made permanent? Do you think these programs in the House version should actually be allowed to disappear after a few years? And if not, how will we pay for the cost of extending them now that we've already picked the low-hanging fruit on tax increases for the rich?
Well, I'll take that. She's correct in pointing out that everything in the bill doesn't have a 10-year runway. And that came about as a result of the negotiations and bringing down the overall price tag of the Build Back Better legislation. I think what everyone needs to understand, over the years, whatever legislation I've written, there's always a price tag to it, always a price tag. And you have to point to what you are going to take out of the budget in order to pay for what your bill costs. If I get 10 million or $20 million, even 5 million, not billion, these are billions that we're talking about in the bill. I'm thrilled because it means I've gotten my foot in the door, and every budget you can keep building on it. So don't underestimate what 6 years means, what 8 years means. Look at where we were with the Affordable Care Act, how difficult it was to pass it. We did. And once the American people understood what that benefit meant to them in their lives, they went after every single Republican that was trying to dismantle it. So when you say, why have this for only 6 years? 6 years is very powerful. 6 years is very powerful, my friends. Please don't underestimate it. And as I said, the reason for it was all part of negotiations and bringing down the overall costs of the entire bill. Why? Because we have very tough math. We have a 50-50 Senate and a 3-vote margin in the House. So if you have a better idea about how to bridge that gap, tell Jimmy and I, and we'll make use of it. But don't underestimate 6 years or 8 years or 5 years. That's a very powerful long runway for programs that are going to walk right into people's lives. And when they do, they're not going to stand for having it taken away from them. You reauthorize.
That's a big, I'm not going to repeat everything she said because it's spot on, of course, but let me just hit on that last point. And that is huge because look, passing legislation, as I've learned in my limited time, that's why I love going into Anna's office and she's got all her bills on the wall. It's like, that's where I want to be one day. It's like, it's amazing. Like she's done all this work to have all these bills on the wall. But passing legislation, it's very difficult to do, okay? But once you do it, it's a hell of a lot harder to take that legislation away. And we saw that what Anna just mentioned in regards to the ACA. Passing it was, and Anna was part of that fight, was very, very difficult. And a lot of, and we suffered a lot. In 2010, the Democratic Party suffered for that. But the fact is they were doing it for the right reason. And look what happened in 2018. We took back the House because of the ACA, because of the healthcare, because the Republicans wanted to take it away and people weren't letting them do that. That's part of the incentive of, look, we get, the prices of where we're at right now with some of these programs, and therefore we have to put them in at a limited time. But you know what? We're laying the foundation to keep these going forward is how I look at it. So understandable question. Anna did an amazing job answering it as to why we did it. But I hope and I think that it's going to be a lot harder to take them away once they're passed, once they're law, once they're in place.
You're muted, Laura Lee.
Sorry, I'm muted. Sorry about that. Elena has a follow-on question.
Oh, okay, good.
So thank you very much. And I absolutely agree that the Affordable Care Act was a great example. And I think that part of my question is not to diminish the issue of having a program being there at all. It's when you're choosing between getting a few programs that are in place permanently, like the Affordable Care Act, why did you choose not to take that route and to do this other one where they can just choose not to reauthorize it? So I don't mean at all to diminish the idea of getting the foot in the door. I'm just suggesting why not do a different foot, as it were.
Well, in one sentence, this was the vision of Joe Biden as candidate for president of the United States. And that's what we did. This is what he ran on. This is what he was elected for. And the legislation is that it encompasses his vision.
There were, as you saw, as everybody in the nation saw and the world saw, based on the transparency that we had in these types of negotiations for this legislation, there were a lot of priorities that people had. And you had to get everybody on board because of the slim majorities. Like I said, we didn't have what LBJ, I guess you walk into the LBJ library and he's got 75 bills up on the wall, huge, major pieces of legislation that he's highlighting it. He had a 155 person majority in the House of Representatives. I mean, his majority was huge. We have 3. And therefore, we had a lot of priorities that we had to deal with and balance. And that's, I think, a big part of why we had to, kind of spread it out. But as Anna said, these are good things. These are really good things. And as you said, once we lay that foundation, we hope that people see the benefits of them going forward. And that's how we affect their lives. So understandable question, but very difficult situation that we were in. But I do believe a good job by the Democrats to come to this sort of compromise when it comes to putting forward such a big bill.
It all came from what Joe Biden ran on. This is what the president said to the Democratic majority in the Congress. This was his vision. All of these, all the bills that are part of Build Back Better are all part of the platform that he ran on and was elected on, including infrastructure. So that should not be lost. Individuals have run for office and they run on a platform. This was the Democratic platform created by Joe Biden as candidate, and now as president. The legislation that he is looking to signing into law, that cannot be lost on all of you. We didn't just all of a sudden come up with these things. It was the president's vision, many parts of it having been Democratic vision for decades, but clearly his platform.
Thank you. Okay, the next question comes from Donna Cavier. And she says, I think that once people feel the effects of the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better Act, they'll appreciate what Democrats have accomplished for them. The question is, how long will it take once the Build Back Better passes the Senate for the effects of the bill to be felt? Will it be before the midterm elections? And how will the funds for the Infrastructure Act be distributed? And how is it going to be determined who gets what when?
Well, it's a great question on infrastructure. There's near term, there's midterm, and there's long term. You don't get to completely renovate a port in 11 months. So some of the money will flow for projects that are ready to go. Others are going to take longer. All of us are painfully aware of the timing and what actually walks people's lives before the midterm. Most of it won't, most honestly, but some of it will.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, exactly. I mean, look, there are going to be some effects from this that are going to be felt right away. The child tax credit, healthcare, capping insulin copays. Some of the housing assistance is going to be dispersed pretty quickly. But, you know, and there may be some shovel-ready projects that are going to be right there, ready to accept this type of funding and these types of grants. But, you know, others are going to be longer to basically actually feel those effects, as Anna said. I mean, you know, we want to tout the programs, but I also got to remind you, it just got signed into law on Monday. And this Build Back Better Act just passed the House. We still got to go through the Senate. It may come back to the House, then it's got to get to the president again. So look, I have no problem continuing to tout these bills because we have to, and what will happen. But I also, you know, we also got to realize that there are going to be some expectations there that we have to meet, but also kind of settle in a way of letting them know, well, look, this is the process that comes through. Trust me, I got to once we passed the bill before it was even signed, people in my district are going to say, hey, let's go. Where's the money? Where's the money? I get it. We understand that. But also know that, you know, certain programs need to be set up, how we figure out how we distribute this money. That's why I was so hopeful and thankful that the president put somebody in charge of that, as Czar Landreau, as I'll call him, to basically be in charge of that. I think trust me, the president knows dang well that he's got to get these implemented sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And Trink Praxel asks, sort of following on, how can we help in California get the Build Back Better through the Senate?
Well, if you want to go to West Virginia and Arizona, maybe that might help. You know, I mean, you know, look, I think it's continuing to do what you do. Obviously, we have two senators who are all on board and having a good understanding that this needs to get passed sooner rather than later because of the benefits of them. But once again, it's having to negotiate with other senators from other parts of the country that have different priorities than us. So as we're doing in our elections, if you know people in those states who are willing to bang on those senators, that's what I would recommend. And also, you know, but realizing though, that in West Virginia, probably not going to have another Democrat besides Joe Manchin in that seat. I think that's the reality of it. I think if any Democrat can hold that seat, it's going to be Joe Manchin. So that gives him a lot of power. We understand that. But also, I do believe that if anybody's going to work out a deal, Joe Manchin is going to get that deal. He's going to protect his state. We get that, and we've seen that, and we know that. But I also think that he's one that will work towards a solution at the same time. So it's just making sure that they are at the table and they are willing to work with us, making sure that we pass this bill. But look, they've given us some good promises. Part of the reason why we passed this bill is because we had promises by them that they're going to pass this in the framework that it's in right now. So that's a great foundation, and that's the foundation we got to. Let's hope they act on it coming up here sooner rather than later.
So we don't have to pack for West Virginia yet.
That's up to you. I know a couple of Californians that are moving there, but you know, sorry for them.
Donna Myers had a comment. We get you to unmute, Donna.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Jimmy and Anna. As a local elected in the mayor's city of Santa Cruz, you know, my political playground feels really small compared to what you guys are doing, but we work really hard, as you guys know, raising up from local government into, you know, just the hardness of creating things that, you know, everyone can get around. And I've watched these all three policies, you know, make their way through, and I really believe this is just a generational investment that, you know, I remember my mom talking about, you know, the New Deal, you know, and what that meant to her as someone coming out of the Depression. And so I think the Democrats will show through history that this is not just Build Back Better, it's Build Back Bolder. And I think you have a whole cohort of young people, I hope, that will be drawn to the Democratic Party because of the boldness of what's happened and the investment strategy that's been put in place. And at a local level, I just want to, again, thank you both. I know we're all Democrats here. We're going to be forever blue in Santa Cruz. But you're there and you're listening to people around the country. And I think Congressman Panetta, your comments about how people are hurting in a lot of places that I will never go to, and I can't put myself in those shoes, but knowing that I grew up in a more of a blue collar town, and a lot of those folks are not where I am in my life right now. So I think that awareness and that ability to really look at that national perspective of not us versus them, but really understanding that investment in education and the other things that come with this bill, as well as the addressing climate change, is huge. Everything I've read is that, climate change is a blue collar job production program. That's what climate change is. People who know how to fix solar panels and build things and manufacture things and create things that I would have no idea how to do are the people who are going to help us with climate change. Those are the people we need working. So just thrilled with everything you've done, and really this morning just here to say thanks. So appreciate it, and great program by DWC as usual. Thanks, Laura Lee, and everybody involved.
Thank you, Donna.
And Vice Mayor Bruner is here too, so she gave me a thumbs up too. So we're both here supporting you.
For your leadership.
Yeah, thanks.
Laura Lee, I think that Cindy had her hand up there for a minute.
Yeah, I've got that, and I still have one from Bob LaMonica, so thank you.
Okay.
And this is, Jimmy, did you want to add something?
Just quickly. Yeah, definitely. Thank the mayor and the vice mayor for their leadership, but also thank you for your partnership. It's going to be very important going forward. Like I said, we got to work together on making sure these programs that are coming from the federal government are implemented. And so that's like with the application process, making that known. So we really want to continue our partnership that we have with obviously the Santa Cruz city government, county government. That's that partnership that I believe that we have here on the Central Coast. I'm sure Anna does with her cities and counties up in Santa Clara. That's so important. So yes, your leadership, but also for us, it's our partnership that really helps us go forward. So thank you guys. Thanks for being on this.
We're here to help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question was in the chat from Bob LaMonica. Is Donald Trump a fluke or a trend? Now that's a whole nother forum, but you've got a couple of minutes to try to address it.
Well, I think that the midterm elections are going to make another kind of determination, and that is he actually, does he own the Republican Party? And it seems to me right now that maybe it's a split case. You saw the Republican candidate for governor in Virginia keep him at bay, and he was successful in that way. But then there were others that were openly pro-Trump and won with that moniker. So I think it's a mixed case, but I do think that the midterm elections will give us a better indication as to, the answer to the question that Bob poses.
Yeah, I mean, he's a presence. Okay, let's make that clear. We know that, but also in Congress, for sure. Obviously, with some of our extreme, what they're willing to say and do and act, but also those ones who kind of learned the recipe, as we saw in Virginia, to not say things crazy, be respectful, but also keep Trump close, but not too close. And that's something that, that's kind of a recipe that you probably, depending on the districts, obviously, is one that we need to watch out for. Now, look, what we did and what you did in California in the recall election was amazing. But as we've seen, what works in California may not work in other parts of the country. And so we need to make sure that, we got to look at each race individually, to be honest with you, obviously. And you got to be careful Sometimes there may be those states where you want to nationalize the election, those districts, but you also got to realize sometimes that doesn't work as well. So, and that's where you look at where all politics is local example. So there's no doubt that he's a presence. It's just the question is how much of a presence is he in each and every race?
Thank you. Cindy, did you want to ask your question?
I just put it in the chat, but thank you very much to our elected officials. Thank you for the courage and resourcefulness and dedication you give to all of us as citizens in our country. My question is, in March, Joe Manchin introduced a bipartisan bill to try to give tax credits for coal miners repurposing their economy. And I've been trying to follow that bill and don't know what happened. And I wondered if that's in this infrastructure bill, if he's getting what he needs.
This is one where we got to watch it in the Senate. So the Build Back Better Act, it includes clean energy manufacturing tax credits, but they're not prioritized for coal country, okay? However, that's just the House version. I'm sure make that same push when it gets to the Senate. So something you have to track. That I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was a comment that Carol Fuller made in the chat that I'll read to you. It adds to a point that Anna made earlier about the ACA. And Carol notes that the Republicans still aren't on the attack regarding the ACA. They're sort of strangely silent on that topic.
No, I don't agree with that. They hate it. They hate it. They despise it. I can say that because I'm fresh off of a markup. That's a writing of a bill that we had in my committee this week on Wednesday. Anything ACA, they detest. I can tell you that. They gave many speeches against it. And they were giving speeches against it because we enlarged the ACA in the Build Back Better legislation. So you may not be catching their speeches, but oh no, they don't, look, the Republican Party has for decades been opposed to any kind of national healthcare plan, and it's still there, unfortunately. I always remind them of how many of their constituents are the beneficiaries of it, and ask them if they say these things at home in front of those that are the beneficiaries. Of course, they never answer my question.
Okay, thank you. I think we're down to our last few minutes, and I'm wondering if we could have Anna and Jimmy both sort of give us a thought on your biggest takeaway from this year and your thoughts about where America is going.
Well, I would say, obviously, you know, the two big bills were dominated the discussion this morning. I want to thank you all again for all that you have done. And I know what you will continue to do. We stand on your shoulders, and we know that we have a Herculean effort that has to be launched in the midterms. You know what the math is. I think that we can do it. I think that we can do it. I would say overall that our democracy is at stake. Our democracy is at stake. We have to figure out how we are going to pass legislation to protect the vote. That franchise is the core of our democracy. And there's only one party that supports democracy, and it's the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, in my view, is no longer a functioning political party. They're a cult. They follow one person, and what was the mantle of the Republican Party, lower taxes, smaller government, is gone. They are about none of those things. So we have an enormous responsibility on our shoulders. Yes, we are producing, but we have to continue to produce so that the franchise, the sacred franchise, the vote in our country is protected. And under that, with that mantle moving forward, our message to people in congressional districts across the country is that the Democrats govern, that we know how to govern. They don't care about governing. They don't care about governing. They use fear to divide people. Our policies are meant to bring people together and to lift up the country, all the people of our country, and move forward. And I, more than anything else, I am so grateful to you because this is what you've been practicing for decades. So yes, the challenge is great, but every generation of Americans have had challenges. We haven't asked for these things to have taken place in our country, an insurrection, a pandemic, but we have, I believe, risen to the occasion. We have to stay strong. We have to remain united, regardless of what the challenges are, and meet them. And I have an unswerving faith in all of you and in our country. We can make good on it. So thank you for all the time that you've given to us this morning. What an honor to be with Jimmy. How proud I am of the communities that came together, had the wisdom to send him to the Congress, because he has steel in him in terms of what, the dedication it takes to get these things done. And you have a team representing you. So thank you, everyone. You're absolutely marvelous. And I want you to know that you give me a vitamin B shot.
Thank you, Anna. Jimmy, any closing comments on this?
Yeah, no, thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. And obviously for all of your support. And like I said, I go into Anna's office, I see her legislation. I say, that's who I want to be when I grow up, based on all of her bills. Let me tell you, her and Mike Thompson have that. I love going into their office because it's inspiring. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And of course, yeah, thanks to all of you as well for not just vitamin B, but vitamin D, for being that sunshine that sometimes we need as we get through our work. I want to read you something that I read the other day. I got an email and says, there's no question that the 117th Congress may be the most bizarre, most troubled in American history. There's the pandemic, the January 6th insurrection and the aftermath of that, thousands of National Guard troops stationed for months in a fenced-off Capitol, metal detectors outside the House floor, mask mandates went on it, ugly partisan exchanges. The House is a tense place right now. It can be. There's no doubt about that. Okay, but like I said, and like Anna and I talked about, we're getting stuff done. The Republicans clearly are the party that want to focus on the past. They want to focus on their grievances. They want to focus on the division. But it's the Democrats, as Anna said, and it's true, as I said in my opening statement, we're governing. We are the serious party right now that's continuing to provide policies for our future. And I think that's what people have to understand in looking at these big bills that we've passed, but also looking at how we are handling ourselves in Congress. This week, there was a resolution against a Republican member who put a meme on his official, this is what I didn't like, his official social media depicting the murder of a woman colleague of ours. And there was a resolution to censure him and to remove him from his committees. But there was also these bills so we're able to do that. But at the same time, we're able to provide the bill that we did and pass the bill in the Build Back Better Act. And that's important to realize, is that yes, we're going to handle those members that act out and do things like that accordingly. But at the same time, we are passing policy. We're governing, we're legislating, providing this type of infrastructure, hard infrastructure, human infrastructure to get through the tough times that we have now, but also use it as a foundation to move on to the future and get through our future for our children so that they can have the same mobility that we had the opportunity for. That's the way we're thinking as a Democratic Party. We see that in the House, we see it in the Senate, and thankfully we also see it from this president in Joe Biden. And so I think it's a continued message of the unity of our party. Despite what you see on TV, know that the results are from our unity as a party and our unity in what we stand for as a party, our unity in that we want to give people the opportunity to move up. Everybody the opportunity in Democratic districts and Republican districts. We don't care. We want to make sure that everybody in our country has that opportunity to mobilize and to move up. And so I think that's obviously something that we're going to continue to message, but it's what, more importantly, it's what we're going to continue to do. And obviously it's going to take help from people like you going forward. Yes, in our districts, but also throughout our country. Very, very important. We do what we continue to do, despite some of these state legislators trying to crack down on people, giving them the ability to vote and trying to change the results of the election, which scares the hell out of me. But the fact is that we get the people out, we overwhelm them with the amount of people we get out to vote and vote the right way, vote for our country. I do believe that that's how we overcome those hurdles that they're trying to put up. They are, you're seeing that in what I call sore loser states because they lost in the last election. And so they're trying to put up these hurdles. We overcome them by getting people out to vote in overwhelming numbers. Easier said than done. I know that. But I have confidence looking back on 2018, looking back in 2020, and that it was the height of the pandemic in which we were telling people to stay at home. But guess what happened? Record numbers, the most ever in our nation's history, came out to vote for a Democratic presidential candidate. And so I think that's what gives me hope going forward, knowing that there are people like you, knowing that there are people in this country who are willing to come out and vote because we're doing the right thing in the United States Congress. So thank you for this opportunity to kind of get ginned up about it a year ahead of the 2022 election, but also thank you for the opportunity to talk about the actually governing that we're doing in Washington, D.C., and hoping going forward that we continue to work together so that that governing affects all of you and affects people in our districts here on the Central Coast in California. Thank you.
Thank you both. What an excellent program, but what excellent representation we have in Washington. So thank you for the hard work you're doing. And for those of us sitting here in this beautiful city and around the state, this is not the only thing you're doing in Washington. There's all the other bills and all the other issues of running our country that are on your plate. And so we thank you and your staff for the heavy lifting you're doing during these hard times. Also want to thank you for making time by everyone on this, and your questions were great. This recording will be posted on our website in a few weeks or days, maybe, depending on the Thanksgiving holiday. I want to thank Mike Rotkin for pulling this together and Peggy Flynn for co-hosting and Lynn Renshaw from our club, and wish you all a safe and healthy Thanksgiving. Wear your mask, get your booster, and we'll see you all in January. Thank you so much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Thankful for all of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jimmy.
Bye, Anna. Thank you. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye, guys.
We'll now end the call. Thank you both and everybody in the public.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. Good job.